Welcome to Alchemy, the podcast for HR professionals who are ready to experience what's possible from the inside out. I'm your host, Sarah Maud, former HR insider and transformational coach. And I'm here to guide you into a new paradigm of HR leadership with the science, the energy, and the insights that create true, lasting transformation. So subscribe and join the movement, and let's create the future of HR together. What's the difference between consciousness and self-awareness? Now, this is one of my absolute favorite subjects. And to help you understand it, I'm going to start with consciousness. Now, consciousness can also be referred to as the field, as source energy, as infinite intelligence, as the divine. But for the purpose of this, I'm just going to refer to it as consciousness. So consciousness is the formless. It's the formless, which is everything. It's this infinite awareness, which is ever, ever present. Consciousness can't be measured. People for centuries have been trying to measure what this is, and it can't be measured. And consciousness doesn't know who it is. It just simply is. And consciousness is who we are. Consciousness is experiencing itself through this physical being that you identify with as you. So I identify this physical being as Sarah. But who I am is consciousness. Consciousness that's been created in form. And that's what consciousness does. In order to experience itself, it creates itself in form. And it's in consciousness that everything is interconnected. There is no out there. It looks like it is to the finite mind, but everything that you are experiencing right now is created in consciousness. There is no outside. Even the sound of the ocean, the sound of nature, the birds, they're not outside of you. Everything is created in consciousness. Now, I know that this can be a bit hard to get your head around, so bear with me. If you were to close your eyes and take your awareness, take your focus to the awareness of your body. And if you were to be aware of how it feels in your body, be aware of any tension that maybe you're holding on to in the body. Be aware of any thoughts, any emotions. Be aware of whatever it is that you're seated on. Aware of your feet on the ground. Well, that awareness is consciousness. That awareness is always there, always present. It's the stillness. And self-awareness is the awareness of the finite mind. So in order for consciousness to experience itself, it needs to stand apart from itself. And so consciousness creates itself as the form. It's the formless creating itself in form. This physical being is consciousness created as itself in form. And it's that consciousness that's able to watch thoughts, to be able to observe thoughts. And thoughts, as in thinking thoughts, is just consciousness coming into form. I'll come back to that one in a moment. And in order for consciousness to experience itself in form, standing apart from itself, it needs to experience that separation in order for it to have an experience of itself. So it's got to stand apart from itself. And when it stands apart from itself, it creates this separation. It creates this localized version of itself. And it's that localized version of itself which is the finite mind. And that finite mind is who we identify as I. It's the identity that we've created about ourselves. So I identify as Sarah. I identify as a woman in this physical body. But if we were to close our eyes and come back to the body, the only way that the body can identify with itself is through thought. Because this physical body in form doesn't know who it is without thought. It's only through thought that it can identify as Sarah, as a woman. It identifies itself through stories, perceptions, beliefs. Who I, as the infinite self, say, that's my friend, that's my profession, that's my family. But without thought, the body's just an ecosystem. Doesn't know who it is. And when you really start to see this, when you really start to get the insight around this, it's the most profound and beautiful and powerful thing there is. Because you realize that you are consciousness in physical form. You're not your thoughts. You're not your feelings. You've just identified with those thoughts, because those thoughts, especially when there's a lot of emotion that's attached to those thoughts, well, they seem very real. They seem like the truth. They can seem like they're permanent. But thoughts come and go. Thoughts only come alive when you place your focus of attention, your awareness on those thoughts. But that awareness, which is consciousness, is what is observing those thoughts. But when we're very caught up with those thoughts, when we're very in our head, and there's lots of emotion in the body, we're kind of caught in a bit of a thought storm. It feels like this is happening to me, that this is my experience, but it's really not. And so the self-awareness is becoming aware of the finite self, the finite mind. It's becoming aware of those thoughts that you have on repeat, those repetitive thoughts, those habitual thoughts, those thoughts which, when you think a thought over and over and over again, becomes a belief, and a belief forms a perception. And those perceptions, they act as a filter system of what you can see, what you're aware of. And I often hear people talk about consciousness as a level. There are levels of consciousness. There are dimensions of consciousness. There's the 3D, the 4D, the 5D, the 6D. I hear people talk about the fields and quantum jumping. It's like the new buzzword in personal development. If you want to take a quantum jump in your career, or you want to take a quantum jump with money, there are no quantum jumps. There are no levels of consciousness. There's no dimensions of consciousness, because there just is. Calling something a level of consciousness or a dimension of consciousness implies that there's somewhere for us to get to. But there isn't. There's just this formless awareness that's coming into form so that it can experience itself as consciousness through form. But the separation is where we experience feelings of lack, feelings of isolation, of scarcity, of I don't have something. But consciousness, there is no lack, because consciousness is whole, it's complete. Consciousness is love, it's abundance, it's all that is. It doesn't even know what lack is, because it's complete. But it's when it stands apart from itself and it creates that sense of separation, and it is only a sense, that's where we experience lack or scarcity, because we're seeing things through the finite mind. And that's what the ego is. It's the finite sense of self that says, I don't have this. And yet, when we raise our levels of self-awareness and we start to be aware of the truth of who we really are, We're aware of thinking. We're aware of thoughts and beliefs. And we start to realize that that's not who I am. It's just I've been identifying with these thoughts. Where we're able to see the stories that we tell ourselves about who we think we are and who we think we're not, what we think is possible and what we think isn't possible. Well, then we expand our awareness of consciousness. It's not that we raise our levels of consciousness, it's just language used. All we're ever doing is just expanding our awareness. And it's that awareness that's always observing what's unfolding moment to moment in your mind, to that awareness of the emotions. And so when I work with people or I deliver emotional resilience training and people say, you know, I am anxious, it's like, well, who is I? Who is the I that's saying they're anxious? Because I am consciousness. I am the ever-present awareness. I am everything. And so when the finite version of you in this physical body can start to see that you are not anxious, you're the awareness that's observing that finite mind having anxious thoughts. You're the awareness of that formless version of you that's experiencing anxiety in the body. That these thoughts are just that, they're thoughts, and they will come and go. And the more that we're aware of that, the more that we see through the illusion of who it is that we think we are, well, then again, your awareness of what is continues to expand. And we can get to a point where the veil drops. And you just are. And I know from personal experience, it's just the most beautiful place to live your life from. Because you realize that life was never meant to be a struggle. That life is joy, is happiness. And you know, when people talk about, I want to feel happy, I want to feel calm, I want to feel confident. Well, the moment we ask for, I want to feel something, then we're suggesting that we're not already those things. But who you really are is already whole. You're already complete. You already are happy and calm and abundant and grounded. You already are love. You already are abundant. You're already all that you are. And you might be listening to this and your mind might be going, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And if you are, that's perfectly okay. I spent years in that, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. But when the veil dropped for me, it was just one of the most profound experiences in my life, which is why I have this emotion when I talk about it. And it's what I want other people to experience, because all pain and suffering is coming from this separate sense of self. And the problem with the egoic mind, the personal mind, is it can never have what it really wants. Because what it really wants is love and happiness. It wants to belong. And the ego can't have that because it was never not that in the first place. So in order for that to be experienced, truly for you to live your life from the full I am presence, well, the ego has to die. And it doesn't die in a literal sense, but it will fight. It will fight to keep its sense of identity. It's one of the reasons why when I've worked with people, and I've experienced this myself, that they have these real profound breakthroughs in the way that they see themselves. They have breakthroughs in their mindset. They have breakthroughs in the way that they feel, the way that they perceive life. And they're like, oh, I've cracked the code. I found the Holy Grail. And then maybe a few weeks later, they kind of hit a bit of a stumbling block, because they were like, well, I was feeling amazing. And now I'm back into this conditioned habitual thinking. And that's just because the amygdala, which is part of the limbic system, part of the brain, and the nervous system, will always try to return back to what is familiar, because familiarity equals safety. And if you've been running these conditioned programs for years, for decades, if you've created an identity that I'm not good enough, I'm an anxious person, I'm always going to be an anxious person, I'm not smart enough, I'm not worthy, I've got to be seen to be perfect. All of these stories and these identities that we've innocently created, and we've created them from a very young age. Well, if we've created an identity about ourselves, we're not about to suddenly drop that overnight. And this is where the self-awareness piece is crucial, and the inner work is crucial, because otherwise we will just keep running our life based on the same structures of thought and feeling and behavior. And people, they want to create change. They want to create change, but in order to experience the truth of who we really are, we have got to change these inner structures. Because otherwise, you just keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And because our thoughts and our feelings are conditioned, and because the amygdala and the nervous system is always trying to return back to what is known, what is familiar, that's again where the inner work is crucial, because we have to keep settling the physical body back down. We have to recode it. We have to rewire it. We have to let the body know that it is safe. Because that's all that it's doing. It's just trying to go back to the familiar because the familiar is safe. So the self-awareness is the awareness of the finite self. But the consciousness, the isness, is able to observe the finite self. And that consciousness is always there. And for me, the purpose of life is to reach that place where we realize there is no separation. There never was. That life was never meant to be a struggle. Because that feeling of struggle is only ever coming from the finite mind. So I trust that this video has helped you see something that you couldn't see before. And what I absolutely know to be true is when we see something that we couldn't see before, that in and of itself can create a huge, huge shift. But I would absolutely love to know how this has landed for you, what it is that you're seeing. Even if there are those thoughts going through your mind that's like, yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. And if it is your desire to experience life that is free from those limitations, then you can use the link to book a free consultation. But in the meantime, namaste.